Hour number 2, that's James Ham. I'm Kyle Madsen. Joe Brazil on the ones and twos, where the Insiders are sponsored by Jiffy Lube, and we're hanging out with you until noon. Then we'll hand it off to D'Lo and Casey. They'll take you up to 4 o'clock, and then at 6:30, coverage begins of Raiders and Seahawks right here on ESPN 1320, Sacramento Sports Leader. It is the preseason opener for Las Vegas, and to preview that preseason opener, got Tashan Reed from The Athletic on the line. Tashan, how you doing, man?
Pretty good, man. Ready for some football. How about you?
Doing the same. Really excited that there's just going to be football on TV. Preseason isn't my favorite thing, but it means that we're that much closer to real football, which is exciting.
It's more entertaining than practice, so I guarantee you that.
Definitely. Are you in Seattle right now?
No, we have actually here in Vegas.
Good for you. All right, so Pete Carroll has said that the starters are going to play tonight. Do you expect that to be a series, a quarter? What how much are you thinking the starters play?
We'll see. I don't know. He didn't elaborate too much. It could have been a little bit of gamesmanship. He said, everybody's live, and available. So we'll see. He might pull the okie doke and, bring the guys out for warm-ups and not actually play them. But if they do play, I would expect it to be pretty brief. I mean, he's a guy that typically with the Seahawks, he didn't play his starters until the second or third preseason game, and it was pretty light. He also doesn't do joint practices too much. And so, I don't really know his rationale behind it, but he's usually pretty light on using his starters this time of year. I do think that the state of their roster lends itself towards it being wise to play more starters just because there's so many young guys, unproven guys, whether it's rookies, second-year guys, third-year guys, and a lot of competition throughout the roster. And so, I understand big guys like, Max Crosby or Geno Smith or Ashton Genty, like it's not really much you need to wonder about there, but some of the cornerback competition they have going on, competition along the offensive and defensive line. I think it'd be good to see the guys get some live snaps. So we'll see how they handle it tonight, and see who actually takes the field.
We were talking to Tashan Reed here from The Athletic on the Insiders. Pete Carroll, he just keeps raving about the running back room. And when he's raving about the running back room, it doesn't seem like he's mentioning Ashton Genty that much. Where is he at? Is he a starter on day one? Do you think that is the case? And if not, how much is he going to play here early in the season?
Oh yeah, he's locked in as a starter. I think he probably hasn't talked about him as much because we kind of all know what it is when it comes to him. Okay. But also it's practice. Like it's kind of hard to say much about running backs. Sure. You're mostly, judging their ability to read a hole, their fundamentals when it comes to pass protection. But probably the area where, Genty's, impressed the most has been his route running. He hasn't just been doing the, break out into the flats, kind of simple running back routes. Like he's been running some legitimate downfield routes, lining up in the slot a little bit. And so I think they view him as a legitimate receiving threat as well. And I think that's, an important skill set to work on because this offensive line was one that was one of the worst run blocking units. It was the worst run blocking unit in the NFL last season. And so if run blocking is an issue for them again, they're going to have to get creative and find other ways to get Genty the ball. And it just provides a different look to throw at defenses and kind of mix it up. So, there's no question about his standing in the pecking order. It's more so about, is the offensive line going to be able to clear some holes for him to run through?
The Insiders on ESPN 1320, Sacramento Sports Leader, talking Raiders football with Tashan Reed, who covers Las Vegas for The Athletic. What about the rest of the rookie class? Like, I think Genty is the guy that we all know and are excited to watch. But how's the rest of the rookie class looked overall?
Guys really stood out the most is receiver Dante Thornton. He's a fourth-round pick coming out of Tennessee, and he's a guy that everybody knew he was physically talented. I mean, 6'5", ran a 4.3 flat, very athletic. But he didn't have much production in college, largely because his route tree was very limited. And that was kind of the big question mark was, would he be able to, have the route running skills to separate from NFL caliber defenders? And throughout practice, that's been the case. I mean, he's consistently made big plays. He's the starting X receiver. He's pretty much exclusively running with the starters, even over second-round pick Jack Besh. And so he's been, outside of Genty, the next most impressive rookie, and looks like he's in line to be a starter. Week one as well. And so Besh has mostly been working with the backups. I think he has a little bit of a redundant skill set with Jacoby Myers. They're both guys that operate really well out of the slot and kind of rotate in on the outside. And Myers, he's their number one receiver, coming off the best season of his career, still in his prime. And it's kind of hard to find those snaps, I think, given that they have those similar, skill sets. And so I think Besh has been lagging a little bit behind, but I would say Thornton and in addition to Genty, those guys have been kind of the standouts of the rookie class. But there's a big opportunity for the defensive tackles that they drafted, Tonka Hemingway and JJ Pagoose. We haven't seen most of them, a lot of them in practice, but especially with them releasing Christian Wilkins a couple of weeks ago, the preseason game is going to be huge for those guys to potentially carve out roles and become a part of that defensive tackle rotation.
Tashan, you've covered this team for a while now. How different does this summer feel with Pete Carroll there, with him bringing in, again, Geno Smith being like sort of a solidifying force there? Like how is the vibes of camp?
Yeah, I would say I feel like this is the first time there's been genuine optimism. And when I say that, not just internally, but also like from the fan base surrounding the team since probably that 2022 season, when they traded for Devontae Adams, it was the first year Josh McDaniels, had Derek Carr reuniting with his old teammate and, had added Chandler Jones and they were about to go for it, right? And obviously it didn't turn out, well, it didn't go how they wanted it to. But that off season, I think you'd have to say there was a legitimate buzz around the team. They were coming off making the playoffs as well. And so that's probably the most optimistic things have felt around here since then. With that being said, I think there's an awareness that the roster still needs a lot of work. It's a very young team, one of the youngest teams in the NFL. They have some pretty significant holes on both sides of the ball. And so I know Pete Carroll got a lot of attention that first week of training camp when he said, he's been winning 10 games every year for 20 years or whatever, his exact quote was. But I think this team needs some more work probably to get there. You never know this supplies teams every year, but I think that's the kind of mentality you have to have, and you want to instill that confidence in your guys in order to get to that point, whether you're ready to be there or not. And so I think the Pete Carroll effect is real when it comes to that standpoint. He's really good at connecting with both players and coaches on a human level. I think front office overall with GM John Spytek, in addition to minority owner Tom Brady, like everything that they're doing just makes sense. Like, they still have some weird stuff going on, like the Raiders typically do, like with the Christian Wilkins situation. But even then, like, it didn't drag out that long. They handled it pretty quickly, and it's kind of they moved on. And so we'll see, what the ceiling on this year's team is. But I think there's some genuine optimism from the fan base in particular about where this team is headed moving forward.
That Christian Wilkins situation. So you said they're over it, they're past it. You're not expecting anything to come from the NFLPA grievance?
Oh yeah, that process is still gonna have to play out. Just in terms of like him, from him being in the building and on the team, like that. Obviously that's over with, but that's gonna be a legal battle for sure. Whether he's able to recoup that, a little bit about $33 million in guaranteed money that they voided in June before they ultimately released him in July. And so I don't know how that's going to play out. I don't think the hearing has been scheduled for that yet. That's probably going to be something that we don't know the answer on until after the season in all likelihood.
Sure.
But yeah, I just meant from the standpoint of releasing him.
You know what? We're here talking to Tashan Reed from The Athletic, talking Raiders football preseason game tonight. Is there anything we should be looking for in this first preseason game, just that you think will stand out, something that maybe you've seen behind the scenes that regular fans and media members that aren't there every day might see?
I think the offensive line is probably the position that has the most intrigue. They recently had a shuffle where they moved Jackson Powers Johnson, who's expected to start at center. They moved him to right guard and then inserted Jordan Meredith at center. He hasn't started at center before in his career. He started at guard last year, about 8 games, and was pretty solid. And that's something that's been pretty widely covered at this point, but we haven't really seen it in live action. So if the starters do play tonight, I'll be very interested to see how that whole operation works out, or whenever the starters do play at whatever point this preseason. I think that's going to be probably the biggest thing to keep an eye on. The defense, we kind of know what to expect. Patrick Graham's been here for a while. They have a lot of familiar faces on that side of the ball. They made a few new additions, but, familiar most of the guys. Offense, there's a lot of change. The big upgrade at quarterback, big upgrade at running back, a new offensive coordinator in Chip Kelly. But the ceiling of that group is ultimately going to be dependent upon the offensive line. And so that's going to be the group I'm really watching closely to see, is this a group are they going to be one of the worst run blocking teams in the league? And is it going to be hard for Ashton Genty, or are they taking a big step forward? Are they going to be able to, protect Geno Smith and give him some time to throw, or is he going to have to speed up his process? And so that's going to be the biggest thing I'm looking for, especially with it being, while they've had some padded practices, this is the first time where it's live, like there's nothing holding back out there. And so that's what I'll be watching.
Geno Smith compared Trey Tucker to Santana Moss. Is Trey Tucker wide receiver 1, Tashan?
If he was Santana Moss, he would be. But I think he just meant, everybody talks with the guys this time of year. But, in terms of play style, he's a similar height, fast guy. He has improved his route running. He has had a pretty good camp. He's the number 2 outside receiver next to Dante Thornton, with Jacoby Myers mostly working in the slot, even though Myers is a slot guy mostly, he's their number 1 receiver. Mm-hmm. And then you have Tucker and Thornton kind of working in as the speed guys. They both are 4'3", 4'4" guys. Tucker's only 5'9", so he's not, the 6'5" Goliath that Thornton is, but still able to separate from defenders downfield. So I do think he's going to, have a major role in this offense. And I think most people probably put him behind Besh when he got drafted, but, he's maintained that starting role, and he's worked out a good chemistry with Geno Smith, obviously getting some nice compliments like that one. So, be interesting to see how he continues to develop this year.
Last thing for you, Tashan, we really appreciate your time. What you mentioned, the optimism from the fan base, and maybe some of the optimism in the building. What's your expectation for the Raiders this year?
I have them at 8-9. I think, I think their line is something like 6 wins. I think they'll be better than that, but they do need to make some pretty significant upgrades on both sides of the ball. And while I think they got better in a lot of ways from a coaching perspective, quarterback, we mentioned Ashton Genty, I just don't think it's enough in this division in particular. AFC West is really tough sledding out there. And I think they'll be a competitive team, a team that's in it most weeks, that you don't see getting blown out or embarrassed like they have in the past. But I don't think this is a playoff team yet. I think they need another offseason to construct the roster they need to be able to get there. But with that being said, I think this season is an important one. Even if they finish 8-9, I think that's a positive step towards building a foundation under Carroll and Spytek moving forward.
Tashan Reed, you can find him at The Athletic, doing a great job covering the Raiders there. Tashan, enjoy the game tonight. We really appreciate your time.